Okay, for this installment of Current Reflections on STEM, we are joined by longtime tribal college leader Carol Davis. Dr. Davis is a member of the Turtle Mountain Band of Chippewa Indians and served as an administrator at Turtle Mountain Community College for 17 years. First as an academic dean and then as vice president. She later served as the tribal college liaison at North Dakota State University, where she helped create a pathway for American Indian high school and tribal college students into STEM careers. She has authored numerous articles on Indigenous STEM, including, I'm proud to say, for Tribal College Journal. Currently, Dr. Davis serves on the National Conference Committee for the American Association for the Advancement of Science and is a senior associate of the Tribal Nations Research Group. So thanks for joining us today, Dr. Davis.
Well, thank you for having me.
I want to start with this question, sort of about your background. As academic dean and vice president at Turtle Mountain Community College, how did you incorporate Indigenous knowledge and Native science traditions into the college's STEM curriculum?
Basically, the Turtle Mountain Community College had a procedure where all faculty would incorporate culture into their courses. I remember one activity that we did. We took one of Basil Johnson's Ojibwe history books, and we divided it into chapters, and we did faculty meetings where faculty members took a chapter from the book and taught that to the other faculty members so that they would become aware and familiar with the culture of the Turtle Mountain Band of Chippewa and Chippewa in general. And there was discussion, and it was a way for helping one another to find ways to incorporate the culture. When we built a new college, I believe we moved in there in about 1999. Cardi was very conscious. Cardi was the president. Cardi Monette was president of the college, and he, in the entranceway of the college, he put up the 7 pillars with one of the 7 Ojibwe teachings on each one, and that became the more or less the pillar for instructing, with instructors getting a lot of information then about the 7 teachings, which are a value structure, honesty, bravery, courage, those type of values, and building them into the different courses, which included STEM. Specifically, one other activity that I was able to carry out was to work with a number of people to incorporate Native ways of knowing into a science curriculum, which became a secondary science teacher training program. And that program was funded for 5 years by the National Science Foundation. And there it was specifically focused on bringing Native knowledge into the STEM programs through science teacher education. So we not only did we help to instruct the students, but the faculty themselves then were involved in the teaching and learning. In some cases, they were learning to use the information that they were teaching into the classroom. So it worked out, that program worked out quite well. So I think that gives you an idea of some of the focus of the ways that we incorporated culture into college level courses.
Yeah. Now, with your experience at tribal colleges more broadly, how has STEM curricula evolved over the past 20 years?
I would say that the National Science Foundation had a lot to do with the overall development of STEM programs. Way back in the day, we were able to get funding from the National Science Foundation to build up our STEM programs at the tribal college. That's when Shirley McBay was at the National Science Foundation in Washington, D.C. She was the program officer. That was followed by the Rural Systemic Initiative, High Plains Rural Systemic Initiative grant, where Cardi Manette was the PI, and it was Jody Chase was the director in Washington, D.C. And that program had 20 tribal colleges, and I believe it was almost 100 K-12 schools involved in the program. Was a lot of data management, and with a focus again on building up the STEM programs at the tribal colleges. And that initiative, that was, I believe, the basis for the development. Some of the tribal colleges did not offer an Associate of Science degree. Turtle Mountain did have an Associate of Science degree at that point, but through the RSI program, we were able to advance what we were offering and include additional programs. We did things like reviewing our chemistry program, for example, and providing additional resources so that not only were we able to incorporate the culture into those courses, but we were able to do things like a calculus-based chemistry rather than the algebra-based chemistry that we had. So the STEM programs got a lot of support from the National Science Foundation, and through all of that, we continued to support the faculty and get them to incorporate the culture. We had a faculty member in the science department, Dr. Scott Hansen, who was a real champion for bringing the culture into the curriculum in the STEM programs. We were real fortunate to have him, and he did his best to learn and then to bring that. He used to send out little messages in Ojibwe to the staff, which was quite remarkable. He focused on bringing some of the language into the curriculum. But that I would say would be the beginning, and then of course when TCUP came in, then that it moved it away from that big grant that was pretty difficult to manage, and put the focus on the individual colleges then, where each college could then focus on their individual needs. And this really helped to bring things such as research into the departments and colleges that were ready. The colleges were able to develop their Associate of Science programs, hire faculty in the STEM areas. Where you had maybe one faculty member in STEM, now you were able to have 2 or 3. It became a real, I guess you would say it became the funding source that really helped a lot of the colleges to get the STEM programs off the ground.
Okay, so you mentioned NSF funding as being an important factor in the evolution of STEM curricula at TCUs. Are there any other factors that you know, are worth mentioning?
Yes, yes, there are. Getting to the student. When Turtle Mountain Community College wrote their first, I'll call it a nature grant. Maybe I should go back a little ways and give you a little history. And I'm always been known to tell stories. So if it sounds like a story, that's what I'm best at, I guess. The AMP program out of Salish Kootenai College invited people, representatives who were involved in the AMP program to a meeting in Rapid City, South Dakota. This was about 98. And Turtle Mountain, I was representing Turtle Mountain. Dr. Padmanabhan was representing North Dakota State University College of Engineering. He was the leader in that department at North Dakota State University. On the last day of the conference, they sat all the North Dakota people together at one table. South Dakota did the same, Montana did the same. There were a number of other states involved. And I sat at the table with Dr. Padmanabhan. It was the first time I met him, and we struck up a conversation. My son happened to be an engineering student at North Dakota State University, and in the discussion I found out Dr. Padmanabhan was his advisor. And we talked about the need at tribal colleges to train more professionals in the STEM areas. And Dr. Padmanabhan said that he was interested in helping Turtle Mountain do whatever we felt we wanted to do, and that he would be willing to meet with us and advance some ideas. So I contacted the North Dakota College deans. I was the vice president at Turtle Mountain at that time. I contacted the academic deans at the tribal colleges, and they were also interested in advancing STEM. And so when I got back from the meeting, I met with Dr. Manette, and I told him about my meeting with Dr. Padmanabhan, and that I had stopped in Bismarck where the academic deans were meeting. I stopped in Bismarck on my way back and got a commitment from all of them that they were also interested in more STEM opportunities. About a week later, Dr. Manette came into my office with an RFP from the Office of Naval Research and asked me if this was an opportunity that we might want to pursue. In those days, we didn't have email yet. I faxed the RFP to Dr. Padmanabhan and got a phone call immediately saying that he was interested in pursuing that program. So we wrote the proposal. When we wrote the proposal, we asked all of the tribal colleges to give us the data on the number of students that were at that point pursuing a degree in the Associate of Science area. Turtle Mountain had 31 students. I don't remember what the other ones were. Some of them did not have Associate of Science programs. So we wrote the very first proposal. We were given funding from the Office of Naval Research. And what we did was we went to the university and designed a program that we felt was going to help us recruit into our STEM programs. The program eventually was known as Nature. In our meeting with the College of Engineering representatives, there were 5 engineering faculty members in the room, along with some other interested parties, plus the academic deans from the tribal colleges. And the academic deans made it very clear that what we wanted was to show students that our ancestors were scientists. And we wanted a program that started at least at the high school level, lower if possible, but to go to the high school level. In that program, what we talked about were some of to emphasize to the engineering college that we had something to offer. We told about the uniqueness of our tribes in the sciences. I remember explaining to the faculty that were there that Turtle Mountain at one time had a doctor named Red Leggings, and she cured cancer. It's documented. She lived until 1926, and it's documented that she actually cured cancer. She ran a cancer hospital. She also cured other diseases. She did some heart work with hearts and so forth. In that process, each of us gave something unique about our tribe. And when I talk about this, I often say that I don't remember what the other tribes told, but I tell a story that Vine Deloria listed in his book, The Way We Used to Be. In that book, he writes about the Arikara, and the Arikara were this particular book that Vine wrote. He went out and he researched 17 and 1800s, looking for people who documented visits with tribes across the United States. One of the and he looked in archives. He went to universities. He went to museums, and he documented a story about the Arikara, where the journalist sat and watched the spiritual leaders and cultural leaders who came together. He watched them play with clay, and he was getting sort of anxious and couldn't understand what was happening and why they were sitting there so focused on these little clay items. And all of a sudden, the ceremony started, and all of the clay figures that the cultural leaders were working with came to life. And there was a miniature buffalo hunt with little riders that were about 2 inches high, riding little horses and chasing buffalo. And in the end, he explains that the person who was documenting this said the most difficult part was for the cultural and spiritual leaders to convince the riders that they needed to ride their horses into the fire, where they were then returned back to dust. But those were the kinds of stories that we told the engineering faculty. And we said we wanted our children to know these things, and they were not getting that information now. And so when we wrote the proposal, we wrote the curriculum so that our teachers, we would hire cultural teachers and spiritual leaders, and they would be the first teachers, and then Western science would be introduced after that. And so the engineering faculty were convinced that this would be something that they would be interested in helping us to pursue. And so we designed the nature program that way. It was first funded for 5 years, like I said, by the Office of Naval Research. When that funding ended, we moved over to the EPSCoR, North Dakota EPSCoR program, which at that time was the experimental program to advance research. And I believe it has a different title now. But the EPSCoR program, under the direction of Dave Givers at the university and Dr. Padma Nobin in the engineering college, and the tribal college deans, we focused on designing this program that would help us to recruit students. Remember, we had already been in the program for 5 years with the Office of Naval Research. When we wrote the EPSCoR proposal, I went back to Turtle Mountain Community College's records and I said, okay, we had 31 students who had declared Associate of Science as a major 5 years ago. What is it now? At that point, we had 187 students who had declared Associate of Science as a major. And these were high school students that had been in the program who were now coming over to Turtle Mountain Community College to pursue STEM careers. And they had been in the program at the high school level on the Turtle Mountain Reservation. And so we could see immediately that the program we had designed was having an impact on students. And today, many of those students are professional STEM workers in the workforce throughout our reservations and in other agencies throughout Indian country. So we think that when it comes to the students, that the bearing on the way that we designed the program with the instruction of the culture first actually had an impact on the students and their way of learning. We've got medical doctors, we've got engineers. EPSCoR had an opening session last year, and they sent out a picture to one of the STEM faculty at Turtle Mountain Community College, and it showed 6 engineers from Turtle Mountain who showed up to the opening session. They were all Turtle Mountain engineers who had been part of the STEM program, with the exception of one. One of them had been involved in the program that Shirley McVeigh had funded way back in the day. The other 5 were all from the nature program. So this program has had a definite impact. And like I said, the culture is taught first and then Western science. It starts with Sunday academies, and the students during the academic year, high school students during the academic year, attend 7 Sunday academies, 1 per month. They engage in a 2-week summer program at the tribal college. Turtle Mountain has, I believe, two programs now in the summer funded by different agencies. They hold 2 where they have 30 students in each one, plus they do a bridge program for the students who are coming out of high school and going into college. It could be either at the tribal college or where else, or somewhere else in, where they're majoring in STEM. So there's about 90 students in the summer who are actively involved in these STEM programs, and that's high school and transitioning into college, and that would be just here at Turtle Mountain. For the tribal college students, we designed a 2-week program in the summer on the university campus where the students are introduced to a lot of different STEM areas, and then they select one area and do a week-long study of something going on. Sometimes they work with a scientist who's doing some research, or they actually carry out a small research project themselves in that department, and then they report back to that. I remember a couple years back being very impressed with one of the faculty members was Julia Zhou at the University of North Dakota, and we had a student from Standing Rock who went there and interned with her, and then went back to Standing Rock and was able to actually give a report on his summer activities to the students in their summer program. It was quite impressive. So we've had a lot of students from all over the North Dakota tribal colleges who go to the university. They select 5 from each tribal college to go I know Turtle Mountain in the past has paid extra to have extra students go because students don't, they're really insistent that they want to go to the universities in the summer. I remember one young man, Austin Allard. He was in high school when I met him in one of the Sunday Academy programs. And I asked him what he was going to do after graduation and after he graduated from high school. And he said he was going to go on to the university. I went specifically to high school graduation that year because he was valedictorian and I wanted to hear him speak, and he was very impressive. He went on to the university, and when he was at the university, he did some workshops with us, talking about nature and what nature was doing. And at one of those, and I was able to visit with him and asked him what his goals were now that he was at the university level. And he said, I want to get a doctorate from Texas A&M, and I want to come back and teach at that time he said the university. Well, he got his doctorate at the Texas A&M and in engineering, and he is now on faculty at Turtle Mountain Community College, where he's teaching the engineering courses. So we've had these very successful students coming out of this model, and we feel that this is also a very important part of the program, is the students are actually benefiting. I know I met a young man, Ryan Brown, who was the first engineering professional to graduate from college from the Spirit Lake Reservation. He graduated, I believe, 2 years ago. And I remember him when he was in high school, and I had pictures of him and Dave Giver sitting where they were sitting under a table doing a Rube Goldberg, where they were making a marble roll through different, I guess you'd say, channels to get the marble to do a certain thing. And he was very enthusiastic, and I met him several times over the years, and he was the first engineer out of Spirit Lake.
I wanted to ask, over the years, outsiders have conducted scientific research in and on tribal communities, sometimes unethically or even to the community's detriment. How can tribes better take ownership of scientific research on their lands and make research applicable and beneficial to tribal members?
Again, research at the tribal level should benefit the tribes. And one way to do that is for tribes to take ownership of all research that's conducted on their reservation, no matter how big the project or how small the project. Again, Turtle Mountain, you mentioned that I'm a senior associate with the Tribal Nations Research Group. I recall several years back, I think it was about 2013, I got a call from Dr. Manette. He was at the University of North Dakota attending a session where a gentleman from the law school was reporting on a research he had done at the casinos in North Dakota, and giving some legal advice and a legal perspective. And there was another lady, Paula Carter, there, Dr. Carter, and they said, you know, we could be doing this on our reservations. And so they gave me a call and to see what I thought about it, and I, of course, was interested. And we put together the Tribal Nations Research Group. We wrote a research code for the tribe. We hired Anita Frederick as our president, who's been super. We have a 501c3, and based on an fully approved IRB who reads all research that comes into the tribe. Anyone who does research on our reservation must have a permit that's issued by the Tribal Nations Research Group. And in our research code, the tribe takes ownership of all data. And every year we've been sponsoring a workshop titled Data Matters. And what we hope is that through the Tribal Nations Research Group, that we can interest other tribal members to become associate members and to start doing research to help us solve our problems here on the reservation. Start looking at our issues and start making recommendations based on data that will impact our tribe. And I say that I won't see this, I won't live long enough to see it, but I would say that in the next 20 years that Turtle Mountain will be like a think tank for our tribe, where we will be actually making decisions based on data. We won't have to sit back and say, you know what I think we should do? You know, if we think we should do something, then let's make it a hypothesis and let's study it. Let's see if it has the potential to work. Let's not duplicate research. If someone is interested in diabetes is a big one. If somebody's interested in studying diabetes, let's not continue to count. Let's not just continue to look at how high their blood sugars are. If they're interested in diabetes, let's look at some of the causes of it. Let's look at what we can do to counteract it. Let's look at all phases, not just look at one thing and keep repeating that research so a student can get a degree, which is fine. We want students to get degrees. We also want their data so we can make decisions off that data. We have many tribal programs that are collecting data. Let's put that data in a data bank and let's use that data to make good decisions. So when it comes to research, research is not just about research. Research is about how we can improve our tribes, improve our reservations based on data. And that's the premise of Tribal Nations Research Group. If anyone out there is interested in what we do and how we do it, we have a website called tnrg.org. Also, Anita Frederick is open to working with other tribes. We've gotten funding from the Bush Foundation out of Minnesota to expand what we're doing and to let other tribes know about us and what we're doing. They extended our study, our funding, so that we could incorporate other people into our way of thinking, and also to fund the Data Matters conference to bring more people in so that they will understand what we're doing.
Okay, and so now do you interface with Turtle Mountain Community College? Does the Tribal Nations Research Group interface with Turtle Mountain Community College, and how does that work exactly, that model?
Actually, Turtle Mountain Community College can play a very important role because they've got the students, and the students can learn to do research. And everybody is required to do community service to meet the objectives of the college, and also to meet the requirements of the Higher Learning Commission. And so there's all kinds of opportunities out there for their students, for tribal college students, to learn to do research so that they can fit into this big picture of the tribal nations to help us become a stronger tribe. We have had success in working with tribal college faculty. Stacy Blue, for example, in the agriculture department, has done some studies that we figure are significant. They did some climate change studies that and also training that were very significant for the future of tribes. And so yes, there hasn't been a whole lot of there hasn't been a whole lot of coordination with the tribal college, but there could be and should be, and hopefully that will happen in the future. We've got a new president coming, and I don't know when, but when that happens, I think there will be avenues for this development to progress.
Okay, well, I know you're busy and we're running out of time here, so I just want to finish up with one last question, and that is, what advice do you have that will enable tribal colleges to improve how STEM is taught and how to improve outcomes for TCU students?
I think I've kind of, the focus on the culture. Culture should be the first thing taught, and no matter which discipline it is, but the first should come the culture of the tribe, because our people were survivors. They say there were 20 million of us year before Columbus landed on the shores, and there was less than 1 million of us left after they got done with us. And I don't know if they're done with us yet, but if you look at the remainder, as we are the strong, we are the ones that survived all that we have a lot to be proud of. And so I think we need to build on the culture of our tribes, the things that helped us to survive, and build our curriculum around what our ancestors knew, and what we've still got teachers that are teaching us. We were fortunate that even though our religions and our culture was forced underground, that we survived that. That is one of the things that has really helped us. We got big water issues everywhere, including at Turtle Mountain. We've banned fracking, and we've done studies. We're in the middle of a big study right now looking at our aquifer and how to preserve it. So there's all these elements in our tribes that need our focus from the professionals who are in the tribal colleges. Our most educated are there, and we need this group to focus in on our tribes and to get involved and find ways to be to produce, to be productive, and to support the initiatives and efforts that are going on in the tribes to try to make them better places to live. Our people are not going to go anywhere. Most people move on and move one city to another, and whatever, our people stay. And so we've got to figure out how to make their lives productive if they're going to be on our reservations.
Great. Well, thanks again so much for joining us, and have a wonderful holiday.
Yes, well, thank you for having me, and I wish you the same.
Okay, hopefully we'll see you soon.
I hope so. Take care.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.